Good afternoon and good evening, everyone. My name is Laura Velandia, and welcome to a new episode of Voices of History, a segment in which give the floor to national and international experts to develop into the key moment in our history, analyze their impact, and discover details that often go unnoticed. Today, we travel back to 1944 to the heart of Italy to analyze one of the toughest and most strategic battles of the World War II, the battles of Montecassino, a brutal confrontation that paved the way to Rome and seriously weakened the German defense. To guide us to this journey, we have the honor to have a special guest. First, I would like to begin by introducing Teniente military historian, director of the Security and Defense area of INISEC, director of the research group at the International Center for Advanced Research in Security and Defense at INISEC, member in support of the Association of the United States Army, advisory member of the Military Law and Security section, and the University and Agency Partnership Program, a university project for the dissemination of the U.S. defense culture, member of the Association of Historia of Catalonia. David, welcome, and you have the floor. David, te cedo la palabra para poder iniciar con unas palabras de inicio para este segmento.
Muchas gracias, Laura, por la presentación. También dar las gracias al coronel Heiner Bröckermann por su participación en esta nueva entrega de Voces de la Historia, como muy bien has presentado. En la de hoy, pues hablaremos sobre la Batalla de Montecassino, continuando en esa gran batalla dentro del marco de la campaña militar aliada en Italia en 1944, con el título de Cómo la Wehrmacht tomó la llave de Roma, en esa batalla de Montecassino. Para introducirnos muy brevemente en ese apartado histórico, antes de dar paso a nuestro ponente invitado de hoy, recordemos que la batalla de Montecassino va a ser librada entre enero y mayo de 1944, va a ser uno de los episodios más duros y decisivos de la campaña de Italia durante la Segunda Guerra Mundial. Tras el desembarco aliado en el sur de la península italiana en 1943, el objetivo estratégico era el de avanzar hacia Roma y expulsar a las fuerzas alemanas. Sin embargo, la Wehrmacht logró frenar este avance mediante un sólido sistema defensivo conocido como la Línea Gustav, cuyo punto clave era la defensa en Montecassino. La abadía se alzaba sobre el valle del río Liri, el principal eje de comunicación hacia Roma. Desde esta posición elevada pues, se dominaban las carreteras, ríos y pasos montañosos, lo que va a convertir la zona en una auténtica llave de Roma. Conscientes de su valor estratégico, los alemanes van a fortificar las montañas circundantes con trincheras, nidos de ametralladoras, campos de minas y posiciones de artillería, aprovechando también el máximo el terreno escarpado que daba así la defensa de la abadía de Montecassino. Aunque la famosa abadía benedictina de Montecassino no va a ser ocupada inicialmente por las tropas alemanas, su ubicación va a generar sospechas entre los aliados. En febrero de 1944, creyendo que era utilizada como observatorio enemigo, la aviación aliada la va a bombardear y la va a reducir a escombros. Este hecho va a tener un efecto contraproducente, ya que las ruinas van a ofrecer excelentes posiciones defensivas para que los paracaidistas alemanes pues, resistieran con gran eficacia los asaltos posteriores de los aliados. La batalla se desarrolla en 4 grandes ofensivas, en las que participan tropas de múltiples nacionalidades, norteamericanos, británicos, franceses, polacos, neozelandeses y tropas también de la India, la 4ª división del general Tucker, 4ª división india. A pesar de la superioridad numérica y material de los aliados, la Wehrmacht va a lograr mantener esa posición durante meses gracias a su disciplina, a su experiencia defensiva y al uso inteligente del terreno. En cuanto al clima invernal, las lluvias y también el terreno montañoso van a agravar esas dificultades del ataque aliado. Finalmente, en mayo del 44, una ofensiva coordinada va a permitir romper la línea Gustav y forzar esa retirada alemana. Poco después, Roma va a ser liberada. No obstante, la resistencia alemana en Montecassino va a cumplir su objetivo estratégico. Va a retrasar el avance aliado, va a causar enormes pérdidas y también ganar tiempo para poder establecer esas nuevas líneas defensivas más al norte por parte del ejército alemán. La batalla va a convertirse así en un símbolo tanto de la dureza de la campaña italiana como de la eficiencia defensiva de la Wehrmacht en un contexto desfavorable para esa batalla y también para la campaña aliada en Italia. Y con ello, sin más dilación, te cedo la palabra ahora para que le podamos dar la bienvenida a nuestro invitado de hoy. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, David. An excellent presentation of this episode segment on military history. Today, we have a special guest to talk about this exciting episode, Lieutenant Colonel Heiner Bröckermann, PhD, master degree in section head and deputy head of the education department of the Center for Military History and Social Science of the Bundeswehr in Potsdam, Germany, as well as a professor at the University of Potsdam and professor of the War Studies. So let's welcome Lieutenant Colonel Heiner Bröckermann. Thank you so much for joining us, and the audience is all yours to begin your presentation.
Thank you. I think we should begin with the idea of the battle from 1944, and I named it How the Wehrmacht Lost the Key to Rome, because this is the real big battle before Rome falls into the hands of the Allied forces. But I will start a little bit on the myths and realities of the history of this battle, and this is really a fierce battle, sometimes unknown, and it's astonishing that a lot of people don't know this battle. But on the other side, it's very much known in Europe, especially in Poland, and especially in Italy, which I come to at the end. Come to some points which are really interesting, just up to date, which is open for research for the future also. And everyone perhaps knows the book of Ken Ford. This is the Osprey book in English. I think it's everyone I know has it. But what we do in Germany, we published a series of books, the official history of the Second World War, and this is now I think it's only one volume missing, but they are all translated into English, so you can see the history of Montecassino in the volume 8. It was published in 2007 in German and 2017 in English. And the author is Dr. Gerhard Schreiber, late Gerhard Schreiber, who died also in 2017. He was very famous for his Italian war history, and he did a lot of things for understanding of Germany and Italy in his military service years at the MGFA. It was a former Institute of Military History, our predecessor here, which was in West Germany and then came to Potsdam after 1990. And in the middle, I have this book from Thomas Vogel, and this was published by my office in 2021, and Dr. Vogel wrote a history of the Second World War in Italy. It is a series of books which we publish for interested soldiers or people who are interested in military history. A lot of pictures, a lot of maps. I will show you some from the book, and it's a pity it's only in German. So, and I think the one book who's most influential today is from my colleague, Dr. Magnus Pahl, who's working also in the education department here. And he published in German in 2021 his book on Montecassino, and he spent a lot of time researching this battle, and he's also published an exposition on the German paratroopers, which became quite famous in the German armed forces in the last year. So this is what normally people in Germany could have if they want to inform from the sciences, from the military sciences in this part. And I hope this, at least the book of Magnus Pahl, will be translated into English one day, which is really worth reading. So what is the Battle of Montecassino? It's of strategic and symbolic importance, I'm sure, and it's a kind of piece for multinational coalition warfare. There's so much, nations, as David already explained. And there's one question: is there one battle for? I will explain. And we have a real complexity of warfare because it's. Sometimes perhaps it's only because of the weather, we will see. And we have a real impact on civilians and on cultural heritage. A long time, Montecassino battle was only known because of the damage or destruction of the monastery of Montecassino and all these stories. Even in Germany, there was a film, The Green Devils of Montecassino. in the 1950s. The film shows how paratroopers are saving the precious things from Montecassino, not telling that some are also stealing some things, but it's where Germany is very much interested in this story, but then it vanished a little bit in the shade of the Normandy landing. And the legacy and historical significance, I will think we can see it at the end of my lecture. So for Germans, there's normally only one battle of Montecassino, and in this battle we have three phases. You see it on the left. So for the others, I think for everyone in the world, they're talking about four phases or four battles of Montecassino. And you see normally it's only the phase one or the first battle and the second battle, which is a little bit different from the German view. So for Germany, normally it begins in January and it lasts up to May. This is a very long battle with different phases, pauses, and in the end, some are counting, oh, first battle is for Germany, second battle perhaps also for Germany, and in the end, the victory goes to the Allies. But if you see, it's a little bit weakening from step to step, the German position. And in the end, it was already clear, perhaps, from the beginning that this line must fall. But for the Germans, they had some idea why it is useful to stand at the Gustav line, because they had another idea what the Allies might do, and it's not taking Rome, it's because they thought it goes in another direction to the Balkans. I will show on the map later. And we have a lot of myths, and some things are real, and it's this idea of this battle of nations. It's a real battle of nations. It's Germany, and it's also Soviet Union, because the Germans had a lot of Russians working for the Germans as people working for them. It's quite these weird stories of the Second World War, how many nations work in other armies due to avoid a war prison and something like this. And we have United States with Britain, Canada, Africa, South Africa, Northern Africa, with France, Morocco, Algeria, Asia, India, famous Gurkhas are fighting, and New Zealand and Poland and so on. We have a lot of people on this battlefield. And this makes also the impression that this is perhaps it's more multinational than the Normandy landing in a way. So, and then this is this idea: the Germans saved the treasures of Montecassino. This is right, but they had also other ideas what to do with the treasures. So, and but in the end, what counts is in the end these things were saved. And I think this is one of the nice stories before the Battle of Montecassino, but it shows a little bit how the Germans led their war also. And we have this idea: there's fighting elites versus conscripts from Texas. They came and fought like the Russians, like the Germans said, really hard battling Americans, fresh from school on the battlefield. And you have those hardened elites fighting Germans fought in North Africa, or paratroopers, which is in a way true, but in another way not. No, it's all an army with young soldiers from all over the world in a way. And there is this story of the Anzio Nettuno landing as a failure. So this is, I cannot say if not or yes, but there is a problem, because when Anzio Nettuno began, it should help, but in the end, the others have to help them, and it's a question what would be the best idea after landing. But we will see it not in this lecture. I thought you had another one on this, and I will only show this aspect of Anzio Nettuno, who's in the mind of the generals of the Allied forces every day. And we have this idea of an Italian Verdun. this is the defense at the Gustav line. Sometimes it's like in the First World War, a war of attrition, fighting and counterattacking, like the Germans learned in the First World War. It's a little bit like this. And on the other side, it's a fighting in the monastery, in the streets of Cassino. It's like a Stalingrad in Italy. So, and it's also very cold, and some German soldiers said, okay, it is a nasty cold. In Russia, it's another kind of cold. In Italy, it's a nasty, humid cold. And so they compared it a little bit to Stalingrad and to this fighting. And it's in the end, a lot of veterans told afterwards, and for years, they feel forgotten in the shade of this D-Day battle. This already started when they took Rome, because in these days the landings came, and though everyone was only reporting on D-Day. This is for the Germans. It's not bad, because the German propaganda was always telling about fighting against the Allies in Normandy, and lost kilometer by kilometer after the battle at Montecassino. So it's only a side notice in the newspapers after the taking of Rome a little bit. So what the Germans expected in 1943 were a lot of invasions. And it's clear in Northern Europe, but it's from Northern Africa. They thought, okay, it could go via Sicily to Italy, but not north to the Alps. But the great fear of the German was a kind of second invasion in this soft belly of the Balkans. This is nearly an idea like at the end of the First World War, when the Germans were fighting in the West and won the war in the East against Russia, but Austria decided to leave a little bit the war efforts. And so the road was free to Vienna and to Berlin at the end of the First World War, but in the end the war finished soon, so that this fear was not really realistic. But in the Second World War, they thought, okay, maybe the Allies go to southern Italy and then leave for the Balkans. So for Hitler and others, it might be interesting to stay at the Gustav line to be able to do a counterattack if the Allies tried to cross to the Balkans. So this is a little bit an operational idea. And so the people in the High Command in Germany are thinking a lot what to do. But in this situation, they realized that Italy was changing sides in several months. So in March, you see here this picture of the new Republic Sociale Italiano in the Republic of Salò. This has to do with the arrest of Mussolini and the change of the Italian Republic. It was in Brindisi, it was a new kingdom of Italy, a little bit aside from Germany, and in the north, the Germans freed Mussolini and gave him a new seat at Salò, well protected by the Wehrmacht. And now this strange thing happened, that the Italians changed sides in summer, or in late summer of 1944. So the German soldier, as you see him here, is a little bit described as an ally, a friend, and an enemy. So it's not really clear. It depends on what side you are in Italy in 1943 and 1944. So these German soldiers, young soldiers of the paratroopers on the left, and on the right it's a picture by an Italian propaganda painter who paints, that Germany is the real friend of Italy. And so the nice German soldier was not so really nice looking, but I think he's a little bit intimidating. And this is this idea how Italy should get through this strange months between the Republic of Salò and the new Italian kingdom in the south. And the Germans also did different behavior, had a kind of different behavior, as we see. What they did, and this is also how Germany worked, they are installing their Holocaust. And this is what in Italy did not happen in a way like in other countries, but when the Italians surrendered on 8th of September, what did the Germans? They tried to target the Jews in every big city, especially in Rome. They first forced them to hand over 50 kilograms of gold, and they did it. They collected it with also help of Italians and I think also by Vatican, but they did it. But on the other side, several weeks afterwards, the Germans detained over 1,259 people, and out of this group, they took more than 1,000 Jews, men, women, children, and deported them to the concentration camp of Auschwitz. And only 16 of them returned after the war. Most of them were killed directly arriving at Auschwitz, again to the gas. And today in Italy, we have a remembrance at the Portico d'Ottavia, where the people are remembering this episode, which is the Holocaust. And so everyone who was fighting at the South Italian front, they knew it's not only a kind of slow walk against Germany far away, it's against a German enemy who is killing citizens in Italy and who's robbing and who is still a hard enemy towards Italian resistance. What it's really, the Italian resistance movement, it's one of the best in Europe, I think. Really hard fighting resistance groups, and the Germans had a lot of problems with Italian resistance. On the other way, they did some massacres on the way from the south to the north, and even in those times when they were had the hands on Italian soil in 1944. But who's to defend at the south? So this is a question for Hitler. Hitler wanted first, perhaps Rommel, it's not really sure, but Rommel was in the north of Italy. Rommel wanted to defend the north of Italy because everyone knew when you're defending farther south of Italy, the problem is you always have the fear against the Air Force of the Allied and the Navy of the Allied forces. They could do landing operations in the rear of every line you are defending. So they thought, okay, it would be a good idea to get back to the Alps and to defend at the Alps, and this is a second-class front, not worth to give everything, so they thought. But on the other side, I told you, this is the idea, if you leave Italy to the Allied forces, they might use it as one step to the Balkans. And so it was better to defend in the south, and this is the idea of Field Marshal Kesselring, and in November he became the superior commander, and Rommel got his new task to defend or to organize the defense at the Normandy front. So, and this is a picture for the Germans when the Italian armistice was, and it's kind of betrayal, like the Germans thought. They thought it is a betrayal. And we have this Mussolini arrest, as I told you, and we have Marshal Badoglio, who was his reign, he was in Brindisi, Salo, Brindisi, the two capitals in a way of Italy. And what did the Germans during this weird occupation, where for the one side they are allies, for the others they are the enemy now? What they did is really a war crime. In the south, they de-armed the Italian army because they're not so safe if they have the real power in southern Italy. They only took the arms and sent them away, but they organized some internment camps there also. But in the north, they put nearly everyone into a military internees camp, also in Germany, and there died a lot of Italian soldiers. And they were not given the status as prisoners of war. They were called military internees, and they were treated like the baddest the German could imagine. Here near Dresden, for example, they let them die in an open cage in a way. It's incredible what the Germans did. And so we expect 50,000 Italian military internees dead and 10,000 missing. It's a great, great war crime. And this belongs to the story of Italian armistice and German revenge for the so-called betrayal. And a lot of books are dealing about the people on the battlefield. And I say there are so many. I think there on the German side, sometimes 30 divisions are dealing with this battle forward and backwards in these times. But here you see some names of people who are more or less known just up to date. For Marshal Kesselring, I already told you, the commander of the 10th German Army, who's in response or has to respond to the Allied attacks, and chief organizing this, General von Vietinghoff. Then you have Valentin Feuerstein of the Mountain Corps, and very famous also General Fridolin von Senger and Etterlin, who is with his Panzer Corps near Montecassino, and for the Fallschirmjäger divisions, it's General Reinhard Heydrich, who's quite famous. And on the British side, it's the commander, it's Harold Alexander, it's Oliver Lees, and for the bombardment of the monastery, it's Lieutenant General Freiberg, and the winner of the mountain warfare is the Polish General Anders, and the French general who's really, I think, his troops made the difference in the center next to the Americans. It was General Juin, but in his ranks were a lot of troops which began some war crimes, which are quite important for the way the Battle of Montecassino is remembered today. And what's important for Montecassino, it's the terrain. You see a German propaganda leaflet, and this is this typical Italian landscape, mountain after mountain. And the German propaganda artist, he puts a mountain of Cassino in the center, and the Germans were defending, and it was a blood mill. The mountains are swallowing the masses of the Allied forces attacking there. And on the other side, we have these mountain slopes, really hard to take, and even in this weather, we have heights dominated by Monastery Hill. You have this 6th century monastery. It looks like a fortress, like a guardian at the Liri Valley, which through the Liri Valley runs this Route 6. It's the road to Rome. For centuries, every army tried to get to Rome, or from Rome to the south of Italy, through the Liri Valley, through this area. It's the only valley which is leading in a direction. Normally, most of the valleys there and the rivers run from west-east to east-west, and but the Liri Valley is going from northwest to southeast, so it's ideal for a strike towards Rome. And there are the Arantium Mountains on the left. It's a kind of Montecassino counterplace, where it's really rough terrain, and the Germans thought, okay, you would never expect someone crossing these Arantium Mountains. So they did not take care a lot on these mountains, which is perhaps a fault in the end. And then these rivers, it's Rapido River. He becomes Garigliano River, which is downstreams running to the Adriatic Sea, and also middle, to the sea. And what's really making everything worse in this terrain is the winter weather. A lot of people are expecting sunny weather, but this is fierce Italian winter. It is existing. And this is a picture to see from the south to the north. You see in the background this really big Monte Cairo, and on the foreground, this is where Montecassino is. On the left, you can see the route number 6 in the Liri Valley, and you see before the dark mountains, this is the valley where the Rapido River runs and the town of Cassino is. And so the whole battleground is, I think this is the key area for the battleground. And when you're passing Montecassino and pass through the Liri Valley, that's the key to Rome. You have it. This is the possibility. It looks so easy in a way, but it should last several months. So when the Allied forces arrived in southern Italy, they did some landing operations, quite known. This is one for Salerno, it's Avalanche, and it's Slapstick. I think Slapstick is a very, very important landing, not for some operative thing, but it's important for the Germans. They had their problems in Salerno, but they knew that there's coming another force from Tarent, and so this is really interesting that these two landings make this big victory of the Allied forces. But the Allied forces were very much exhausted. They had sometimes to spend two weeks to regroup, to fill up logistics. And the Germans took their time to go to Naples, and they have a civilian uprising in Naples. And this led to fierce German counter-reaction and some war crimes and looting and everything on the way back to in this Rome direction. This is one of the German war crimes I think people are today always remembering, also in this area. And here is a map of our institute where we have this landing of Salerno. I will not explain it for long, but you see that the German forces are trying to battle against these landing forces. In a way, it's not working, and so they are regrouping and fighting their way backwards up north. So this is another map where you can see the Salerno landing, the forces coming from Sicily by land, and the forces at the Gulf of Tarent. And you see that several lines are on this way, and several lines just up to this so-called Gustav line. This is the line where the Battle of Cassino should take place. The Germans thought, okay, it has to be this Gustav line. It's near Cassino, or a little bit in this direction of Mignano on the left side of the map. You see this is a Bernard line. So you have this Bernard and Gustav line as the line of defense. And this line is crucial to stand. If you can stand there, you have to leave this part of Italy. Everyone is quite clear. And then in this time when in the south we're battling and the others are preparing for defense at this Cassino and Monte Cairo, there's this episode where the Lieutenant Colonel Schlegel, which he's on the right side, who's preparing his defense. He's preparing the defense for the paratroopers, but he is responsible for logistics and has a lot of lorries for transport. And they want to transport these treasures of Monte Cassino and also treasures which the Germans had taken from Naples, or the Italians also, because they wanted to protect the precious things in Naples, some pictures, paintings. And so a lot of things were on Monte Cassino, and they were transported from Monte Cassino to the Vatican, sometimes to another part, it's Spoleto, it's another place. And some pictures even made it to Germany in a way. But one thing is real, they gave a statue to Goering, but other pictures, Goering said, okay, it is perhaps stolen, he don't want the pictures, but very precious pictures they prepared to give to Goering, to his big collection. So it's a little bit the real rescue of this precious books, paintings, everything from Monte Cassino, which came to the Vatican, when the Germans also realized that some are murmuring, okay, the Germans are stealing things. No, they want to show to the world that they are protecting the cultural treasures of Montecassino. But some lorries made their way to another place, and so it's a little bit of both. It's a little bit this looting, and it's more of it. It's saving, and so the name of Julius Schlegel today stands for saving these treasures, even if he could not be really true that everything would be saved. So, but in the end, and this is what counts today. Without Schlegel, without perhaps here to see Fridolin von Sänger-Ettelin, who is he's Catholic, and he's really so convinced to do anything for the monastery. So some say Schlegel was willing, but only Sänger von Ettelin could help to put this in the right direction in the end. So it's a little bit, it should be remembered Julius Schlegel, and it should be remembered Fridolin von Sänger and Ettelin. And you see pictures where the abbot of Montecassino is leaving, and there are some people stayed there. They thought they are safe because it's such a precious place, and they thought they are safe. The Germans said it's not allowed for German soldiers to take Montecassino monastery as a defense position, as a fortress. So they had to stay 300 meters far from this Montecassino monastery. And so there was no German soldier in a fighting position in this monastery. On the other side, they were always installing their defense positions. Here are the pictures of Colonel Heilmann from Fallschirm Regiment and Richard Heydrich, the commander of the Fallschirmjäger division. So these are the people, they have a lot of time to prepare for defense. And they prepared with the knowledge the Germans had since the First World War, how to hold a position, to go the forward slope for looking at the enemy coming to nearer, and to prepare the artillery, put the artillery on the rear slope. They prepared for these fog launches, the Nebelwerfer. It's a kind of rocket artillery of Germany. They prepared little bunkers that so they can shoot. They can put it into a kind of shelter during the Allied counterattack. So they prepared everything. Barbed wire, destruction of bridges, mines, tanks on the large plains to have a maximum distance for fighting against the Allies with tanks on large distance. And you have the grenadiers, the tankers on the plains, the paratroopers on the mountain slopes, on difficult places, and the mountaineer troops on the high spots. So that in the center defense, I think it's about half of this area of Italy from one coast to another. The Germans had a really dense system of 16 kilometers depth and in a way 150 kilometers, but in a battle it's more or less 50 to 70 kilometers. It's more or less the battleground. But you see it on a map. This is, in a way, Italy and the Gustav line in January. And there's again a German propaganda paper where the Germans, they said, okay, the Allies, you need so much time to get to Montecassino. If it's going like this, you are in Berlin in 1952. This is like German propaganda tries to have any impact on Allied powers there. So, and this is the river situation in winter, and they really tried to get the Allied forces over the river with kind of boats, a rubber boat, and here is the real boats. And so crossing this Garigliano in the south of the battlefield of Cassino and Mignano, and the engineers are trying to organize ferry crossings which are really working, even transporting tanks with things like this. But it's, in a way, it's not enough to transport tanks and to transport logistics in a full-scale attack against the German army prepared to attack and to counterattack. This is the first battle. It's not looking good. You see, this is a pontoon bridge, and here's a signal corps man is doing some repair. But you see these problems when you're on the river and you can be seen from the mountains. The artillery, for example, these rocket artillery of the Germans, Nebelwerfer, they can shoot for 10 kilometers. 10 seconds, 6 rounds, 10 kilometers. And this is like a Stalin organ. It's called the howling cow or howling mini. It's really a fierce artillery tool the Germans had there. And this is a ferry. It's this Bailey bridges, which is really an incredible invention that the Allied had. These bridges were so multifunctional. It's a real tool it doesn't matter. With this invention, I think it's an invention that's gold worth. And so the Germans are preparing here their machine guns, and so on the first battle, when the first battle started in January, you see on this map, it's quite a little bit full, but I think you see where the Allies, it's in red, they attack, and the Germans in blue, they defend. And you see that the Germans were well prepared. It was no real surprise what came. And it was a kind of controlled defense, as I said, like First World War. And the Allied had problems during the weather with flooding sometimes, and these problems of the rivers are rapido, it's quick. Rapido, the name is, when you see rapido, okay, it has to be a quick river, and so it even was in winter. It was difficult to cross it. And it was absolutely not sunny Italy. It was fierce weather conditions. And with fierce weather conditions, it was also bad road conditions. But in the end, it had some effect. We had fierce losses on the Allied sides, and we have also fierce losses in the German defense lines on the first lines. The Germans lost a lot of soldiers, but they stood fast in the end. But it is a battle. You can't do it every day. So, but for the other side, it was the same thing. So we had a little pause. And you see this, like for the Allied in Time magazine. And for this, you have nice pictures of this battle. The Federal Archive of Germany published a lot of pictures in Wikipedia. And if you look for other pictures, I would say you can go for scientific reasons or for teaching. It's the Imperial War Museum, which has a nice picture archive online, which you can use for educational reasons. It's possible. I think I take some pictures from it. I can recommend it to use this IWM resources. And this is one resource showing like Americans see it. You have the town of Cassino. You have these monastery on the top of the hill. You have these strong points like the Continental Hotel where the Germans are. You have this Hangman's Hill where the Gurkhas are attacking in this mountain. Or on the left, you see it's 78 miles to Rome, a little bit more than 100 kilometers. So it looks near, but it isn't. And to get the real quick victory, there comes a surprise, even for the Germans. They didn't know. There was this landing of Anzio, and this came in the back of the German defenses. But as you know, it was not really a really strong attack on land. And so the effect was a little bit disastrous, that in the end, the defenders of this Anzio landing, they have to hope that the Americans arrive one day, and the Germans try to battle here against these forces, but they didn't make it. So in the end, it's the Germans are good in defense, but you see they're not so good in attacking with a lot of divisions. So I think this is really a sign, and this is also January, a sign that this is not a battle the Germans could win for the long term. I think this is already clear, but they want to stand because of this idea, I think, to prevent the Allies from crossing to the Balkans, perhaps, if they could stand. I don't know what. Some say it's a war of attrition. Everyone wants to organize his own blood mill. But in the end, the art of war is winning against the enemy's armies. And it's better to be operational to win and not to let 2,000 be killed by the enemy to kill 2,500 in a way. So I think no general things like this. But what you see here is a little bit lack of ideas, perhaps. But this will come after some months. And in this first phase, there were these fierce Moroccan fighters. The Moroccans are organized by the French in Northern Africa in greater organizations called Tabor, and they're called the Goumiers. And these people are real fierce fighters. They are feared even by the Allied forces. And in the end, they are not under real control of the French forces. And but they're doing very well in this mountain terrain, even where there's no real way. And what they're doing for months is night patrols. They are sending out as night patrols with their knives. And if they have to get 5 or 10 prisoners of war for interrogations, they will bring them in. But on their way, they kill a lot of Germans behind the lines. And the Germans start to fear the Moroccan soldiers very, very much. I think sometimes they are more feared than the Gurkhas, which normally are very fierce soldiers. But the Moroccan Goumiers, they are really feared by the Germans over the months, because there are some stories, there came stories, they're cutting off everything by the soldiers' ears and something else. And this is really, there is a story running around, and so these people are very much feared in the end, and this has also quite an effect. And here's the Anzio landing, some pictures, but I will not come to this. After the first phase, which is not a real victory, they handed it over to the New Zealand division. And so this General Freyberg should attack, and he told clearly, the first attack, they had so many losses on the Allied side. When we want to attack, we want to get rid of this gruesome monastery. It's looking like a fortress. Maybe it isn't a fortress, but no one knows. And the Germans are at the slope in defense, and maybe when we are attacking, they go to this fortress and defend from the monastery. So this is sometimes a little bit a story after the battle, because what Freyberg wanted is the destruction of the monastery. And this is, in the Allied, sometimes say, okay, it's useless to bomb a monastery, because in the end you have a large amount of rubble and you can defend in the rubble too. But in the end, the Americans did it. And so we had on the 15th of February, this really big attack on the monastery, an air raid, and it was totally destructed. You see on the picture below the rubble, the dust. And this is a real, it's a cultural loss. It is incredible that the Allied did it. But today they want to explain it, but in the end, it's you cannot be proud of it. Perhaps this is also one part of this battle, which is a problem that it was sometimes forgotten, I think. This is really, you cannot be proud of it. And soon afterwards, the Germans took the monastery as a nice fortress, because is destructed, and the Germans took it for fighting then. Not before, but then. And as a combination, the Allied air and artillery is firing rounds on Cassino, the village with 20,000 people, and the Air Force is bombarding this town. And in the end, it's the same thing in a way. The rubble is on the streets, and you can only cross the street by foot, and this is a fierce fight. You have no road free of any rubble. So this is also, it's impressive, but the Germans were prepared to it. They could defend, they could stay there. And in the end, it was not very suitable for a nice attack of the Allied forces. So, but I think this is really what everyone expected, to bombardment and then to attack. But you have to orchestrate bombardment and attack. And this is in March, and the weather condition is still too bad to exploit those things, to attack through this terrain. But they thought they have to attack, and I think they have to attack because of Anzio beachhead. So I think it's I may not impress when they decided not to attack in March. What would the people think at Anzio? I think it's really normal that they try to get ahead, and they had much more soldiers. They had much better logistics over the months, but in the end, they didn't reach it even in the second battle, in this battle up to the end of March. But you see on the little map, again, there is the taking of Cassino. They can take the city of Cassino, not every part, but they can take it, and they can take some strong points. And in the end, for the Germans, it becomes more and more difficult to defend. But they can hold, but it's clear there has to be something more, but the German side is not defending at the front. It has to defend in a more elastic way, and this means to the monastery, back from the slopes to some strong points, but in the end they are defending the monastery. And on the picture on the right, you see this Hangman Hill, which is defended by the Gurkhas inside of the Germans, and this is really hard fight. And this is what I told you about this Verdun and Stalingrad feeling. The people told us it's a really hard battle with no way to hide in this terrain. And what's with the population? This is a picture of the population that they have to be taken away. In this area, they take about 600 people per day back to southern Italy. And this is the population is really freezing, is bad nutrition. Also they suffering a lot during this battle. And here are Indians attacking Cassino. I just pass to next. And here the Germans in the rubble of the monastery defending their strong point, now strong point. And you see what happened in the second battle. It's the attack of the New Zealanders. And this is another image where we can see the same effect. Cassino is taken and some strong points on the mountains. And they can place tanks in the mountains, to the mountains. This is what they can do. And you can see if you have a tank in the mountains, that's not so, it's a sign of a weak German defense in a way, if you can do this. And so this is, the signs are coming, but the Germans are still defending, especially in the Liri Valley. And this is the key area. The Liri Valley is defended, still defended. And here pictures in a courtyard, German taking a rest. And then is this group, Alexander, General Lees, and General Jean. They are thinking what to do. And so they are discussing a lot what can be done. And they have to talk to Alexander, to General Clark also. And what General Juin is bringing with them is his Goumiers, his Moroccan fighters. Here's the pictures of them, normally with a dagger and a kind of bayonet, and this is no motorization, no real, which is really a little bit a shame. The people are not well equipped, They're making a kind of myth story of it, but indeed they are taken from Northern Africa and giving perhaps a helmet, but they expect to fight them, I think, with less. And so this idea of the dagger and the sword and something what they have, a little bit, it's a kind of mystification of a lack of some things normal soldiers should be given in battle. So, and this general, Augustin Guillaume, he was lieutenant colonel and was a creator of these tabors and goumiers in Morocco. And he, over the years, up to 1945, when this war ended in Germany, every time he was responsible for this whole goumier troops. So he is the officer who's directly responsible for the control of these groups. And above him, it's the General Juin. So these are soldiers, and when they died, on their gravestones stood, on the Moroccan soldiers, they mort pour la France. They died for France. So they are thought to be French soldiers of these Moroccan, so kann man sagen, a kind of fierce fighters, like perhaps compared to the Gurkhas of the British. And here you see a Polish map where the Polish soldiers prepared the artillery bombardment in the next phase of the battle. So you see everyone was preparing. Here's in red. These are the artillery places where they want to shoot at during the coming attacks. So the Polish are now given the attack. First we have British, Americans, New Zealanders, and now it's up to the Polish division to attack. And it's before the third battle, you see that now the Allies are concentrating on the left flank towards the south, and they took the French forces next to the Americans and the 8th British Army much more close to the south. And this brings a big effect to win this battle at last. And so this is the third battle, and this is really the battle where the Montecassino ended in a rather big victory. But where ended it? You see the attacking Allied forces, and in the north, in the upper part, you see the attacking Polish soldiers up to the monastery, and in the south you see French Expeditionary Corps. It's at the coastline. There are the Americans, but north of the Americans are these goumiers who are crossing the Arunki mountains, and these Moroccans are really, they're getting through these mountains. And on the one side you have these Polish soldiers on the Montecassino, and in the south you have these Moroccan soldiers who everyone has really, they're fearing them. And so the Moroccans and the Polish soldiers, they made the most impact in this battle, I think, in this phase. And then comes the big armored forces. They can cross the Liri Valley, and the Germans, they had to take other positions more closely to Rome. So, and this is the Polish leaflet where the Polish victory is shown, attacking over the mountain, taking the monastery, and the Liri Valley is taken by the British forces, Americans, and this is like it looked on the battlefield. There is Sherman shot at a German Sturmgeschütz, and here these tanks crossing the mountains. Normally it's nuts to do it, but it's worked. They had these tanks through the mountains. And this is how it looked like. Everything in rubble, the city of Cassino, the monastery of Cassino, and Cassino is the victory. Like you see the Polish flag and the British flag on the rubble of the monastery, and some soldiers from South Africa presenting a swastika they took as a prize. And these are already some days later, you got the medal parade. So the General Anders, the Polish general, is handed over the Order of the Bath in recognition of the Polish bravery and Polish victory on this Montecassino hill. And even women are fighting in a way. I think it's very interesting that this corporal of the Polish Women's Auxiliary Service got the Bravery Cross, because she was in charge of a canteen, served hot drinks in the front lines for 17 days in this area. You can imagine what it was. And what's quite astonishing, in the end of the medal parade, she married on the battlefield another corporal of Poland. So they fought together and married at the end of this day. So this is the stories that happens also that makes also this story very popular in Poland, that you have so much stories and so much to tell, that I think the most people visiting the battlefield today are Polish and Italian, but it's also Polish people. So afterwards, the Germans fought their way up north to the new line. It's the Golden Linie near Florence. And the question is, after the battle, what happened after the Battle of Montecassino? It's counting how much victims. We have deaths, 35,000 to 75,000 in total on both sides. My predecessor institute, they counted 20,000 Germans killed in action and 12,000 Allies killed in action. But in total, of the battles of Montecassino, they said, okay, might be 350,000 killed in action, wounded, missing in action. I think they are some numbers you see here. And this is a picture showing a grave of a British soldier and the population of Montecassino here, caring for it. But what's really a problem, even up to date, is this story of the so-called Marockinate. Because after the battle, these Moroccan soldiers, they crossed the countryside looking for something to eat, but they had a real of mass rape. Either there's a really big rape in this area, which is even today, it's in France, it's a little bit difficult to discuss. They have some interesting works a few years ago where French historians a little bit battling, that some is saying, okay, we don't have 60,000 rapes, we have perhaps 5,000 or 7,000 rapes, and others say, no, it's not the Moroccans, and in a way there are also other soldiers doing it, and they say, okay, there is some racism, is it? But you have, and this is in Italy, it's really a thing which is coming up to the courts in Italy. Some years ago, there was a woman, she was nearly 100 years old, and she was raped with an age of 27, and it lasted up to, I think, 2000 and some years, up to get a kind of pension. She only wanted to have more higher pension than normal for this atrocity, and she had to go to court, and during this court in Italy, they discussed it, they talked to historians, and I think this is today a story which is told from a lot of people didn't want to talk about it, but I think this is really a story we will hear a lot about it in the next years. And what is really striking, that we have two stories. On the one side, on the left, there is later he became a minister in France, but it's Hogarth who wrote a nice story, a romantic story of soldiers of Morocco finding their love, but it's not of Montecassino. It's another game, but it's about this legacy of Tabor, of Goumier, its whole legacy of Second World War in a love story, but it's not related to Montecassino. But the preface is written in 1952 by this General Guillaume, who was responsible for the whole Second World War when these were operational, these troops. And he wrote a nice preface, and the book got also a prize in France. On the other side, you have in 1957 a book of Alberto Moravia about Ciocchiaria. This is the village where nearly every woman was raped, I think. The mayor told it to public rather soon. And there was also a kind of women movement during the 1950s and 60s. The women met to talk about it. This was the first effort to make it public, very interesting. And they made a film out of the book. And the film was very famous to women. And Sophia Loren got an Oscar for this film. And after this, it was already forgotten, this whole story. So it is, I think, a really interesting aspect of this battle. Today, the German cemetery collected about 20,000 soldiers from whole southern Italy, and it's organized by the German War Graves Commission, which is called Volksbund Deutsche Kriegsgräberfürsorge. And we had organized a colleague, Dr. Pahl, who is my colleague. He organized an exposition. It's an exposition since 2022. There is one room where you can visit the cemetery and have the whole history of this battle done by researchers of our institute, which I think is a quite nice idea to do this, have this after such a long time. So this is it in a short. Thank you for your attendance.
Thank you very much, Lieutenant Colonel Heiner Bröckermann. Thank you very much for joining us on Voices of History. It is a real privilege for us to have you here and discuss this crucial episode of our military history. Thank you very much for your presentation. So, and if you agree, let's start with some questions to put this important event into the context and develop deeper into this historical and strategic significance. David, ¿qué te parece si iniciamos con algunas preguntas para contextualizar el episodio del día de hoy? ¿Estás en mute?
Sí, perdón. La
Ahí
primera
ya.
de las preguntas que hemos recibido sería la siguiente. ¿Por qué Montecassino es considerada la llave de Roma en 1944?
Okay, the first question is about why was Montecassino considered the key to Rome in 1944?
Yes, it's a last real defense line of defense, which gives the opportunity to have to organize a defense from the two sides of Italy, and it's historically the guardian of the Liri Valley for centuries, for armies to enter the suburbs of Rome. They have to cross through this area, I think, and also the trains, the road number 6. This is typically the only quick way to get to Rome.
Thank you. Thank you, Coronel. So we continue with another question too. David, ¿qué te parece si seguimos con una siguiente pregunta?
Sí, la siguiente pregunta dice, ¿cómo logró la Wehrmacht defender con éxito Montecassino durante meses?
The other question is about how did the Wehrmacht manage to successfully defend Montecassino for months?
I think it's the preparation. It's the preparation of the battle. They already knew months before that they would choose this area, and they have this knowledge even from First World War, how to defend a strong position, and this is, I think, it's on the other side. It's a little bit this question if the Allied forces had the right recipe, or like this, right ideas to attack. Maybe they want to attack on a really bright scale, and it's like in Germany when you say who wants to defend everything is defending nothing. Perhaps it's the other way around. Who wants to attack everything is attacking nothing. So you have to to decide where to attack. And on the other side, the Germans told from the very first days, they said, for example, the Texan division arriving, they said they are fighting like the Russians. And they are really astonished that these Americans are so fierce fighting. They didn't expect it. So this is really, in a way, difficult situation. One side well prepared, other side also well equipped, but it has to be logistically supported. That comes over months. And on the way, I think the main question is the weather. The last war, the last battle is a nice weather. It's a question of the weather in a way. But this is, yeah.
Thank you very much. An excellent answer too. We continue with other question. David, ¿qué te parece si seguimos con una tercera pregunta para este episodio?
Sí, en la pregunta dice lo siguiente, ¿qué papel jugó la destrucción de la abadía de Montecassino en el desarrollo de la batalla?
The other question is about what role did the destruction of Montecassino play in the course of the battle?
Yeah, this is a very good question because, as I told you, first, it's more psychological. The view of like a castle on the hill. This looked like a kind of intimidating. Maybe I attack up the mountains, fighting upwards the mountains, and then not to know is there anything. This is this image. But on the other side, it's absolutely useless. Perhaps after the bombardment, it was quite easier to fight in this rubble. So it is, but it's really difficult to say. I think it makes no sense to bomb it because it's a problem to fight in this building if it's intact, and it's a problem if it's not intact. But this is maybe it's a question of psychology in the end.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Lieutenant Coronel. So we continue with the last question of this episode. David, ¿qué te parece si vamos con una pregunta final para este episodio?
Sí, la última pregunta sería, ¿qué consecuencias tuvo la batalla de Montecassino para la propia campaña de Italia?
What consequences did the Battle of Montecassino have for the Italian campaign?
For the Germans, it's a great loss of material, of soldiers. You can't afford to lose people in a way. But they told their own people it's a kind of victory. This is really weird. But in Germany, I told you the green devils of Montecassino is already written in the newspapers in the days then. And they're telling of a fierce fight. And then everyone is distracted by the Normandy landing. And so they always writing, oh, we have fights, strong fights, they're protecting, they're fighting in Italy. And so no one is really realizing that this was a real decisive victory, in a way, of the Allied forces. In a way, it is a decisive victory, but it has to do with what happened. Now we know that Normandy landing was very much successful, but if not, this is a real victory for everything. And you see this idea, Anzio landing, in the end, it worked. And they had other landings. So this idea of fighting the way up north, liberate Rome, this is the Axis, a capital of an Axis power. It was quite different in 1944, but it's officially, it's really important to have one capital of an Axis power. You had Rome, now it's Berlin and Tokyo. So this is for the Allied forces good. For the Germans, they told their own people it's a kind of victory. We have to go back, but irgendwie it's like a victory. It's really weird in the German propaganda.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Lieutenant Colonel. An excellent answer too for this episode. Lieutenant Colonel, Professor David, thank you once again for sharing your knowledge and experience with us. It has been a real honor to journey with you through this significant episode in history. To everyone who joined us, thank you for being here and being part of this new space of Voices of History. We remind you that you can visit our website to learn more about upcoming events, conference, and new installment of this international interview series. We'll see you again very soon in the next episode of Voices of History. Thank you very much and see you in the next international episode. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Heiner. Excellent presentation.
Thank you.